So I was vulnerable to this Jeff is junior detective helper tactic. So they would say things like, kids won't talk freely around us, but they will around you. Let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time. They would ask me questions and, They asked me opinion questions and then congratulate me that my opinions were correct. They made me feel important.
What kind of opinions would they try to get from you?
They asked me, well, what route do you think that she took going from her house to the park? And so I just thought about, well, I know where her house is situated. I know where the park is. This is the most logical route that she would take.
Right.
And then, then they told me, then another thing would be, they told me her keys were missing. And then they asked me to speculate, well, what kind of keys do you think that she probably had? Mm-hmm. But separate from that, they told me like there was a cassette, her cassette tape, her cassette or Walkman was found, but the Walkman tape was missing. So when they asked me, well, what kind of keychain? So I'm thinking, well, she's an immigrant, her keys are missing, probably a I Love New York type of keychain would be. So they're just asking me these opinions, and they're saying they're using the word opinion. What do you think? And in your opinion, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm just having a normal conversation with them. My speculations or my opinions are no.
They're just playing psychological games with you.
They're playing psychological games with me, and in addition to that, a further game is that they're playing good cop, bad cop. Mm-hmm. One officer is pretending to be my friend, and the other one is the bad cop. So they were keeping me off balance that way. And in time, I began to look at the cop who was pretending to be my friend, as like an a positive adult male role model in lieu of my father. Mm-hmm. So that goes on for about 6 weeks, and in the course of that, they're giving me details about, like, one time they brought me to the crime scene, and the lieutenant who oversaw everything, he's telling me the 3 different scenes. At the crime scene, there's 3 different scenes at the overall crime scene where different things happen.
Like the scene where she was first attacked and then she was dragged.
Correct. Yeah. There's a scene where she was first attacked. The area where she was raped. There's another area where she was dragged. So he tells me this, and then he's just asking me to then confirm that. And then later on, and where I'm at the police station after that. And then the detective was pretending to be my friend. He asked me to draw a map of the area where you think everything happened at. Well, you guys just told me earlier where you think everything happened at. So I'm just regurgitating what you're saying. And when I was at the crime scene, the detective said to me, her body was found over here. And it almost, this was when he was building off what the lieutenant said. He says, well, her body was found over here, and there was leaves on top of it. It was almost like somebody was, trying. There's a contrast. On one hand, she had been attacked, murdered, and raped. But on the other hand, after that, there's like an attempt to try to protect her body from the elements by putting leaves on top of it. So he tells me that at the scene, and then when we're at the police station later with this map thing, and then I'm just repeating stuff that they're saying is what I'm getting at, just as a microcosm of the many interactions that I had with the police over those 6 weeks. Mm. So they wind up taking a blood sample from me, and they said that they were going to send it for DNA testing, and that this was one way that I could be ruled out as a suspect. So I gave them a sample of my blood. Then later, they tell me that there's some new information that's come into the police file, and they want to share that with me, and that's going to allow me to be more helpful to them. First, though, I'm going to have to take and pass a polygraph. So the next day, rather than report to the high school, I instead went to the police station for this test, where I had heard through the rumor mill that other people had been tested at. And instead, they drove me to the town of Brewster, which is in Putnam County. So it's 40 minutes away by car. So there's 3 cops that come with me from Peekskill. There's the 2 detectives and a lieutenant. But the bad cop and the lieutenant, they're in one car. They put me in the car by myself with the cop who's pretending to be my friend. So another example of another psychological game that they're playing. And throughout this process, they periodically
Do they have
read
you
me
like
my rights.
restrained while they're
No,
doing
no,
this?
I'm not restrained at this point.
Okay.
No, and they're periodically reading me my rights, but I'm a 16-year-old. I don't understand what they're saying, and every time they read anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law, I'm thinking to myself, my mind goes to like a civil court. I'm thinking, court, what are you talking about? We're not going to court. And that was all further obscured by the fact that they're playing this game overall, that they're pretending like, they need my help to solve the crime. Jeff is this junior detective helper. So they drove me to Brewster, 40 minutes away by car, which now means I'm not able to leave on my own. I'm totally dependent upon the police. It's a school day, so my mother and grandmother, they think that I'm in school. So they don't call around looking for me. They have no idea that anything's wrong. So I get to the place, and since I'm driven there, I don't know where I'm at. I'm totally dependent upon the police now. There's a Putnam County Sheriff. There's the polygraphist is a Putnam County Sheriff's investigator, Daniel Stevens, and he's dressed like a civilian, and he never identifies himself as law enforcement. He never reads me my rights, And so we go to the waiting area, and he gives me a 4-page brochure which explains how the polygraph worked. But it had a lot of big words in it which I didn't understand. But then I figured, well, what does it matter? I'm here to help the police. Let's just get on with it. And they don't give me anything to eat the entire time I'm there. Then from there, they bring me to another small area where the polygraphist gives me countless cups of coffee. And then he attaches his polygraph machine to me. And then he launches into his third-degree tactics. So he invades my personal space. He raises his voice at me. He asks me the same questions over and over again. And as I'm not used to talking to adult males because, as I mentioned, my father was never involved in my life, and I didn't spend very much time with my uncles or other male members of my family. So I'm really not used to communicating with an adult male, much less somebody who's carrying on in the ferocious manner that he is.
Right.
So each hour that goes by, my fear is increasing in proportion to the time, and he keeps us up for 6.5 to 7 hours. Towards the end, yeah, that's a really long time.
That is a long time.
All while I'm attached to this machine. And so he winds up saying at the end, I guess he was exasperated by that point, that he hadn't gotten me to confess yet. And he says, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the polygraph test result that you did. I just want you to verbally confirm this." And when he said that to me, that really shot my fear through the roof. And at that point, the officer who had been pretending to be my friend, he comes in the room. The other cop leaves. He comes in the room. Detective McTarrick comes in the room, and he says, he tells me that the other officers are going to harm me. He's been holding them off, but he can't do so any longer, that I have to help myself. Then he says to me, just tell them what they want to hear. You can go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested. So being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, not thinking about the long term, instead being concerned with my own safety in the moment. I was in fear of my life. The fact that I didn't know where I was and that nobody else knew where I was either loomed quite large in my mind. I was overwhelmed emotionally and psychologically. There's this push-pull effect. On one hand, there's the possibility of harm, and on the other, there's this false life preserver that he threw me. And so I took the out which he offered, and I made up a story based on the information that he had given me in the course of the investigation. By the time it was all said and done, I had collapsed on the floor in a fetal position, crying uncontrollably, and obviously I was arrested.